Today, we're diving into three incredible moments in Dutch history. We've got a stunning victory, a desperate defense, and a heartbreaking tragedy. But hang on, this isn't just your standard history lesson. Not at all. We're going to explore how these exact events are being used right now to help forge a warrior's conscience and build moral courage when the odds feel impossible. So let me ask you something, and really think about this for a second. How do you train for courage? I mean, it's one thing to teach someone how to fire a rifle or fly a plane, but how do you prepare them for that moment when their conscience is on the line, when making the right choice is also the absolute hardest one? That's really the big question we're tackling here.
Well, the answer, and this is what's so cool about it, isn't some fancy new technology or a high-tech simulator. Nope, it's a tool that's actually been around for centuries, but it's been completely reimagined for the tough, morally complex world that not just service members, but really that all of us live in today.
So why does this matter so much? Well, because today's conflicts aren't just about who has the better gear or the smarter tactics. It demands something way deeper. It requires a really strong ethical foundation, an inner compass. Some folks are starting to call this spiritual fitness. It's all about making sure our warriors are not just incredibly skilled, but also deeply morally grounded.
The tool we're talking about is called the military staff ride, and at its heart, it's pretty simple. You take a deep dive into a historical battle, a lot of times on the actual ground where it all went down. The whole point is to walk the terrain, break down the decisions that were made, and pull out these timeless lessons in leadership.
And get this isn't some new fad. The basic idea goes all the way back to Frederick the Great in the 1700s. Later, the famous military thinker Clausewitz formalized it, and for centuries now, it's been a core part of how we train military leaders. It's a proven method for sure.
Okay, but here's the twist. This is the really game-changing part. We're looking at what's called a spiritual fitness staff ride. Just look at this comparison. A traditional staff ride asks, what happened and why? But this new approach asks a totally different question. What was the right thing to do? See that shift? The focus moves from tactics to conscience. The goal isn't just to make better strategists, it's to build stronger souls. So, to really see how this works in practice, we're going to walk through three defining moments from Dutch history. The best way to think about it is like a flight simulator, but not for a plane. It's a flight simulator for your conscience, for making those tough ethical calls.
All right, Act 1. We're going back to 1667, to the raid on the Medway. This is just an incredible story of audacity, of brilliant planning, and of the sheer guts it takes to risk it all for the sake of peace. So here's the scene. The Dutch are at war with England, a much bigger naval power. But they spot a critical weakness. The entire English fleet is just sitting in the dockyard at Chatham, totally unprepared. So the Dutch admiral, de Ruyter, he does the unthinkable. He sails his ships right up the River Thames, smashes through the English defenses, captures their flagship, and basically forces an end to the war on his terms. An absolutely stunning, decisive blow. And this right here is our first big lesson. That physical courage, the guts it took to sail right into the enemy's home port, that had to come from somewhere deeper. It came from a moral courage. It was this internal agreement, this interior assent in their conscience that said, yes, this is incredibly risky, but it is the right thing to do to secure a just peace. That belief is what powered the whole mission.
Okay, now we're going to jump way forward in time, nearly 300 years, to 1940. The world has totally changed, and this story isn't about a bold attack. This is about a desperate, courageous defense against a brand new and terrifying form of warfare.
In May of 1940, Germany unleashed the very first large-scale airborne invasion in history. The plan was a lightning strike to capture the Dutch Queen and government and end the war in a single morning. But it didn't work. Instead of folding, Dutch soldiers and reservists fought back with incredible ferocity. They counterattacked right away, retook all three airfields, and gave their government just enough time to escape, totally shattering the German plan.
So what's the lesson here? It's about hope. I mean, the odds were insane. The attack was a complete shock. But their courage was fueled by a powerful belief. The belief that what they were defending, their freedom, their country, their way of life, was so much greater than the danger they were facing. That's what kept them in the fight.
Our third and final act is, well, it's a difficult one. We're going to 1995 and the Srebrenica massacre. This isn't a story of victory. It's a story of tragedy, and it forces us to look at what happens when a mission fails and the incredible moral weight that leaves on the shoulders of those who were there.
You have this small unit of Dutch peacekeepers. They were given a mission that was basically impossible from the start.
protect 40,000 refugees in a UN safe area with light weapons and very little support. So when Bosnian Serb forces attacked, the peacekeepers were completely overwhelmed. The promised UN and NATO backup never really came through, and the result was the worst massacre in Europe since the Second World War. The Dutch soldiers were left with a profound sense of what we now call moral injury.
And this leads us to probably the most profound question of all. When you do your duty, you follow your orders, but it ends in a tragedy you were powerless to stop. What comes next? How do you find your moral balance again? This question gets at the kinds of wounds of war that go way, way beyond the physical. So after looking at these three completely different moments, a bold attack, a desperate defense, and a tragic failure, what's the big takeaway? How do we connect these lessons from the battlefield to our own lives, right here, right now?
Well, the crucial point is that we can understand all of these stories through a clear ethical framework. These principles here, acting with the right intention, using only necessary force, protecting the innocent, taking responsibility, these aren't just abstract military theories. They are a practical guide for how to use power ethically in any context.
And this right here is where it all comes together. This is the pivot. Because the very same kind of courage that it takes to preserve a nation on the battlefield is needed every single day to preserve our relationships with our families, our friends, and our communities.
Think about it. All these virtues we've been talking about, service, restraint, accountability, integrity, they are not just for soldiers. They are essential for all of us. You know, the patience to really listen to someone, the humility to admit when you're wrong, the mercy to forgive. These are all acts of courage. The real training ground, what the source calls the battlefield of the heart, is right there in our daily lives.
So we end where we began, with a question for you to take with you. In your own life, when you're facing your own personal raid on the Medway, or your own defense of the Hague, when success is not guaranteed and the challenges seem overwhelming, what is it that will sustain your will to act with courage? What anchors your conscience and your faith?